Hello, good evening. Good evening. This is the annual roundtable on the Night of Nations. We call it Night of Nations every year. Last 2 years it was remote. And first and foremost, we should. I don't think this conference would have happened without Meenakshi's dedication. So she single-handedly did it. I don't think we would have had any conference at all because it requires so much. And now you see, 2-year-old, she's managing. So we should thank her for all her dedication. So today we have Dr. Charak, Vinay, Aditya, Narasimha Rao, Ronnie, Dreyer, and Mark. So we will discuss about the annual charts of Ukraine, Russia, China, and US. So Vinay, Aditya will do the moderation, and let me give.
Vinay is not doing it, so after this,
I will do it. I don't. Anyway, so let us start. Vinayji, you have the charts of. Do you want to start with? Do you want to?
Going around the table for each country.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Vinayji, you want to begin?
Mr. Rao could start, or Ronnie could start. They are the experts on Monday.
I don't know where you got that impression from.
Yeah, anyway.
Thank you.
So, Narasimha Rao, would you like to start?
Sure.
Yeah,
The thing is, I will not be using the Charakak Prapada.
Yeah. So
Meenakshi
please.
told me that I can project my.
Yeah. So please do whatever.
but can it be shown to people because
Yeah,
they might like
that's
to
what
see.
he said. That's what he said.
So
There is a. Is this the one, Meenakshi ji? Yeah.
yeah, make some arrangement so that people can see
Yeah.
and we can see.
Oh, actually, for you it will be different. They can
We
see.
can, I can turn on.
Okay, they can see. Oh, we have to use this mic.
We are not seeing this one. We are not seeing this one. We are seeing something else.
We need Meenakshi ji to help. Oh, I'm not sharing. That may be why.
Yeah, this is what it is.
Yeah. Let's try this.
Yeah, no, it's still forward one. It went back.
Huh.
I think they are so few. Narasimha, you have to go share screen and you still sharing the voice.
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen, but the thing is,
Not this screen.
what happens if two people share? I'm sharing, but maybe the other computer also is sharing.
Yeah, that's fair.
That may be the thing.
Yeah, I can see your screen, Narasimha ji. If you go into view options, shared screen and select Narasimha Rao, it will show your screen.
Now we can see how it's.
Okay, great. So, Rakesh ji, practically logistics. So for each country, each person, how many minutes? 3-4 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'll start off with the chart of Ukraine. And as we discussed in the morning in that session on mundane astrology, there are a lot of options. You can use Chaitra Shukla Pratipada chart, and there are other lunar and solar chart options. But when a reliable formation chart is available for a country like India or Ukraine, I prefer to use that. That will give more clarity than these lunar and solar new year charts. So I'll just use the chart of Ukraine. And if we look at this is the data, by the way. Oops. This is the data. August 24, 1991, 5:56 p.m. Kiev, Ukraine. So I made the Tajika chart for 2021 because we are still in 2021-22 year, because they were formed in August, on August 24. And if you look at the Navamsa chart, which shows relations with other countries, you will see that the second and eighth house axis has a bunch of planets. The third lord Jupiter is in the second house with the second co-lord Ketu. So this is a Marka combination. Second and third lords being together in the second house is a Marka combination. And also we have moon with afflicted by Saturn Rahu in the eighth house, and Lagna Lord is in the eighth house, even though it is one house. So this is a year where this kind of combinations, if the seventh lord is also if the eighth house or sixth house are very strong in Navamsa, there is a chart of some clashes with other countries during this time. So this Navamsa chart does show a war, and Trimsyamsa chart shows overall mood in the country. If the mood is really terrible, some mishap is happening in the country, if the country is suffering as a whole, the Trimsyamsa chart can show that. And in this Tajika chart, in Trimsyamsa chart, we see that the seventh lord Venus is in the eighth house. Again, seventh lord in the eighth or eighth lord in seventh is a Marka combination. And he's also afflicted by Saturn, Rahu and Ketu. So the eighth house is really, really strong. And second lord Mars is in the third house. Again, that's a Marka combination. Third lord in second or second lord in third. So there is a Marka combination. So there is a lot of suffering in the country during this year. And let us look at the next year, because this year is just a couple more months. So let's look at the next year. If we make the Tajika chart for 2022 for Ukraine, we can see that in the Trimsyamsa chart of suffering in the country, Lagna contains a debilitated planet, the two Badhaka Lord, Sun, which is negative, but Jupiter is aspecting Lagna, and Venus is in the eighth house, but he's the eighth Lord, and he's not afflicted by any other planets. He's also the Lagna Lord. And Saturn is aspecting Lagna, but he's Yokarka. He's not really a bad planet for Tula Lagna. So overall, when you look at the next year's chart, it looks a lot better than the previous year's chart. So there is a good chance that in the coming year, things will improve for Ukraine. There'll be some peace agreement or some uncomfortable stalemate that both the sides accept is possible in the coming year. Actually, using the lunar New Year charts in the May-June time period, there is a chance of some rapprochement, but unfortunately, practically, it doesn't seem possible. So most likely it will be in the next year. And one more thing is transit-wise. You can see that in Ukraine's natal chart, Moon is at 29:45 Capricorn, 29 degree 45 minutes Capricorn at the end of Capricorn. And we can see that transit-wise, at the time all this started, Saturn was close to natal moon. He was around 26 degrees or so in February. And at the end of March and April time period, Saturn came extremely close to moon. And I think on April 4th, there was an exact conjunction of Saturn and Mars over natal moon, degree wise. So that was really the peak period. But now, if you look at the transits now, Saturn has moved on. It is still Sade Sati for Ukraine, still 7.5 years of Saturnine trouble, but Saturn is at 2 degree Aquarius now. So if you look at the longitudes, Lagna is moon in the natal chart is at 29:45. So right now, Saturn is still within 3 degrees from it. So if you look at a couple of months later, actually, let me just hide this, it'll be easier. Yeah. So suppose we look at August 11, just a couple of months later. Look at the Oh, actually, he's coming back. Saturn is coming back to Capricorn. So okay. So transit wise, it looks like that moon is being afflicted by Saturn for a while. So let us look at the dasa in that case. Not this. Ukraine. Okay, this is the 2022 chart, and this is the Navamsa chart. Actually, I take it back. If you look at the Navamsa chart of the coming year, 7th Lord Jupiter is in the 6th house, afflicted by Rahu. There is a Guru-Chandala Yoga in the 6th house of war. So I take back what I said. My fear is, even though people may get used to the suffering, or suffering in much of Ukraine may be relieved a bit in the new year, the Navamsa chart does show continuing quarrels or war with other nations. So my fear is this may drag on for some more time. And when Saturn is sufficiently away from the natal moon, there may be some relief then. So I'm afraid this will drag on for some more time. Who wants to go next? Ronnie?
Well, I can go next. Well, I'm kind of a little bit off kilter here because I wasn't expecting the Chaitra Shukla Pratipad charts. So I'm not looking at any of the country charts. I'm just looking at April 1st. And I don't always use these charts because, especially when you're looking at charts for, I mean, you don't have it on the screen, but when you're looking at the chart for the new moon, what happens is that you get certain countries that are within the same time zone, and they have basically the same chart. So unless you're looking for, I mean, if in the terms of Russia, you're having here Gemini rising, and in terms of Ukraine, you're having Taurus rising. And you have that new moon, you get the new moon in Pisces in the 10th house. You know, the way I look at the world and the way I look at charts, I don't really do this, and I don't even look that much at the countries, but I will say that what I always talk about here have a lot to do with the whole nature of, you know, where the planets are and where the eclipses are. And I know I did this on the other day, so I'm not going to go all the way into it. But I think what we have to do is really, really look at, especially in the state of the world right now, that things are just so up and down all over the place. And I think that one of the things that is going to happen in the next 6 months, as I said, is that we are going to have Mars going retrograde from October 30th to January 12th. It starts to go retrograde right in between the two eclipses on October 25th and November 8th. We are also going to deal with a Mars Rahu, and for those who do use Uranus in the chart, a Mars Rahu Uranus conjunction, and that's going to take place the very end of July, the first few days of August. And I think that's what's going to start to lead into what's going to happen in the 6 months of the next 6 months, really, from mid-July, I would say, till January. And I would say not just affecting America, even though America is very affected because the eclipse on November 8th is going to be on our election day. And that eclipse is going to be, you know, I just think it's going to be very potent. I think that the eclipse last year of November 19th occurred the day before Joe Biden's birthday. And I'm not somebody who predicts, you know, that leaders are going to die or anything like that. But I think for many leaders in the world, you know, from Biden to Putin to Zelensky, there's going to be a lot of change, and it doesn't have to be death. It doesn't have to be incapacitation, but there's going to be a lot of reorganizing, you know, reorganizing. People might step down, they might be replaced, they might for time have to be incapacitated. And this is going to affect the world. Johnson in Britain and, you know, India. I don't think it's just a few of the countries. And excuse me for not looking at these, the Chaitra charts just confuse me. They confuse me because even though the Lagna changes, it's basically the same chart, you know, of the world. And you have to feel that that's the day that is going to be, you know, noted. So first, I just want to talk about the things that I'm most familiar with. And that has to do with these. Now, the Mars-Rahu conjunction happens at 24 degrees of Aries, and it occurs on August 1st. The Uranus-Rahu conjunction occurs first Uranus-Rahu, July 31st, Mars-Rahu, August 1st, Mars-Uranus, August 1st. This is a 24 Aries right in Bharani. And, you know, we do know that Bharani is ruled by Yama. And it's going to be, I believe, when you have this, it also means that Mars is in Aries, the sign it is, you know, comfortable in, which means that Mars is comfortable doing, you know, its damage, let's say. And it's going to be very, very intense. And I think that we are going to also, we've also started experiencing that, at least in America, with the shootings that we've had in the last few weeks. And those shootings also started to happen in between. One shooting in Buffalo happened 2 days before the lunar eclipse. It happened on May 14th. The lunar eclipse is May 16th. And then we also had, of course, the first eclipse on April 30th. So the next shooting in Uvalde, Texas also occurred on the 24th. I believe that this whole idea of violence and guns, I think that's going to be part of what's going to be happening over the next 6 months. I think there's going to be a lot of, it could even be more violence before we finally do something about this. And I think that the violence is an extension of what's happening in America. It's the extension of the, you know, war in Ukraine and Russia, and it's going to start happening in other pockets, I think, of the world. If I do look at this Chaitra Shukla Patipad, Mars and Saturn are both in Capricorn. Mars is at 25 Capricorn, and Saturn is at 27 Capricorn. So Mars is, you know, pretty close to its, you know, exact degree of exaltation also. And that Mars Saturn, you know, one can say, oh, you know, this is a great exaltation and Saturn is great in terms of its, you know, rulership. And it could be, you know, but in fact, a lot of this has also to do with the combustion of Mercury. So we have the sun moon at 17 degrees of Pisces, and we have Mercury at 15 degrees of Pisces. And when you have these kinds of conjunctions that are going on, they sort of start to obliterate a lot of higher knowledge in the world. They start to obliterate things that have to do with learning, and they have to do with communication and travel. And even things that have to do with food. And so this is kind of like, I think if you're using this chart as the chart for the new year, I think what you have to do is look at that. And then you can see that Saturn is also aspecting from Capricorn, it's aspecting onto those Pisces planets, and Mars is aspecting onto Rahu very, very tight. So you get Mars at 25, Saturn at 27, Capricorn, and you get Rahu at 28. So the theme of Rahu and Mars is a theme that then gets repeated when it comes into this conjunction, you know, during the summer. And if you look at the Ukraine and Moscow, you'll see also that the Moscow Lagna is Gemini, and the Ukraine Lagna is Taurus for the Pratipad chart, not for, you know, their absolute chart. So all of these, Saturn, Mars, Sun, Moon, Mercury, obviously they're on the same degree. But in Russia, they're in the 8th house because they're having, you know, the Lagna of Gemini. And in Ukraine, they have the Lagna of Taurus. You know, so in some respects, it's interesting because when you have this Venus in as Lagna Lord and Saturn, Mars in the 9th house in a Taurus chart, if you just look at that quickly, it would seem to be successful and good, even though the Pratipad chart goes through next April. So it's quite possible that, you know, when you have this eclipse in October, actually the October eclipse is going to be right on northern Russia. I have a feeling that something's going to culminate. And I don't know if Ukraine is going to win or Russia's going to win. It probably might be some kind of mediation. But it looks to me, just if I'm looking quickly, and I'm looking at this for the first time at the Russia and Ukraine charts, that Ukraine has the nicer chart for the year. So, you know, that might just mean, but we have to wait the year. That's the thing. It's a year chart, you know, so this is not going to happen quickly. You know, I have a lot of other things going on in my head. I'm going to pass this down.
Move out of the camera. Yeah. We can probably discuss both together, won't we? Yeah, please. Can I do that? ये कौन से कैसे करना है इसको? How do we do this? Can this one go away? This.
No, no, it has gone. It's clear.
It has stayed to stay
Yeah,
there.
it's clear. On the screen.
Okay. I plan to confine myself to the Chaitra Shukla Patipada chart and probably also refer to the Mesh Sankranti chart because both are the charts for the year that is going on. Chaitra Shukla is the solely lunar new year beginning, and Mesh Sankranti is the beginning of the solar year, which starts from the sun's entry into Mesha. And I have in front of you the chart of Russia, CSP chart 2022. Russia. Now, as it has been pointed out, these charts remain the same for several countries, with the, of course, the Rashi position of the planets remaining the same for the whole globe. So this Russia chart, Mithun Lagna, Gemini ascendant, it remains the same for several other countries, including Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and so on. And the most problematic thing that appears right away is that the 8th house has the Saturn-Mars combination, and the Lagna Lord is debilitated and combust in the 10th house. So overall, for all this region, the inherent strength of the governments is not very robust, and the Saturn-Mars combination in all these regions would indicate a high death rate. So we are seeing all that happening almost everywhere. It's a very igneous combination. Saturn and Mars cause a lot of fires, accidents, wars, and things when they are occupying the 8th house, and that is happening here in this region. Also, because the Lagna Lord is weak and combust and aspected by the 8th Lord Saturn from the 8th house, there is a pressure on these governments also to quite an extent. You have seen changes in Pakistan and in Sri Lanka also, and there may be something going on in the Russian government also. But then the aspect of Jupiter on the Lagna is quite a protective thing. So I think that probably is not the situation. And the economies suffers for all these countries because the 4th Lord is combust in the 10th house, aspected by the 8th Lord, although the 11th Lord Mars is exalted. So there will be some attempts to improve the economy in all these regions, but the stress on economy continues. If you look at the Navansha chart, you see the Rashi chart will remain the same for so many countries. So the difference will be in the Vargas and the Navanshas, where we consider the relationship with other countries. You can see that Russia's Navansha Lagna has Moon and Sun and Rahu Ketu and the Lagna Lord Jupiter. They are all very grossly afflicted, and the Lagna Lord with Ketu is also aspected by Saturn. So therefore, Russia has suffered some problem with the relationships with the other countries and the rest of the world. And if you look at the Dashmasha chart, which is for the government, we have the Lagna Lord of the Shmasha, which is very important, is exalted in the ninth house. There is some strength to the Lagna. But there is also some stress to the government because Mars in the 10th house is aspected by Jupiter, which is not only the fifth lord, but also the eighth lord. So some stress on the government is there. Saturn is aspecting the Lagna, which is the sixth lord. But I think Russia's economy eventually would manage to be all right. If you go for the Mesha Sankranti chart, we have Aries ascendant, Mesh Lagna, and Mars and Venus in the 11th house and 11th lord in the 10th. So I think economy of Russia is going to remain all right, although there will be some stress there. And that is there in the Chaitra Pradipata chart as well. 8th lord in the 11th also indicates that things may not be very nice in the beginning, but eventually things will improve. So I think Russia will come out of the financial constraints which are there, although not fully. And if you look at the chart of Ukraine, which is the CSP chart, then for Russia, the Lagna is Mithun. For Ukraine, the Lagna is Vrishab, Taurus. And you can see that the Mars-Saturn combination goes into the 9th house. And this can be considered a good combination also because 9th lord is in the 9th house and Jupiter is in 10th house with another benefic Lagna lord. But there is a much bigger strain on the survival of the government as far as Ukraine is concerned because the Lagna lord is in the 10th house associated with the 8th lord. And there is this aspect of Mars and Saturn on the 3rd house, which is house of communications and neighbors and all sorts of transport and things, and that gets damaged. And the 4th house, which is the land of the country, that is aspected by Mars, which again suffers a lot, and the 4th lord in the 11th is aspected by Saturn. So obviously a lot of damage is there as far as Saturn is concerned, as far as Ukraine is concerned. But the Lagna lord in the 10th and second lord in the 11th house with the sun and moon, probably the financial aspect to some extent will be all right. As far as Navansha is concerned, you have the Yoga Karga Mars in the Lagna, and Jupiter aspects the sun and the moon. So I think as far as the relationship with other countries is concerned, Ukraine would be doing much better than Russia, and that is the fact there also. In the Dashmasha chart, again we have this Mars in the. This is similar to Russia's chart, but here again this Mars is there, and in the 10th house aspected by the 8th lord Jupiter. So some stress on the survival of the government will also be there as far as this present situation is concerned about the war and things. Obviously fluctuations will occur according to the transit of planets, particularly the movements of Mars during this whole year. But I think one of the main things that will decide the outcome, I think, will be the movement of Saturn. And Saturn is going back to Makar, which means that a part of the agenda that was left unfulfilled by Saturn, that is going to be fulfilled. And I think once it becomes direct and then it moves out of it, then things will improve. And I think eventually when Saturn moves into Kumbh for the final time, things would settle down. Otherwise, something or the other will linger on. Thank you. Vinay.
Can you show my sheets? I would like to take the crane first.
Okay.
You can get started, I will start to show. You can get started, I will start to show. यहाँ पे तो नहीं दिख रहा, मैं इसमें से ज्यादा फोकस कर रही हूँ। कंप्यूटर में है वो। विनय जी, यहाँ पे कहाँ पे मुझे भी है, इसमें कहाँ जाऊँ?
CSP आ गए ना, ठीक,
ये सारे
पहले यूक्रेन का
पहले मुझे ये सारा दिखाना है ना।
थोड़ा बड़ा कर सकते हैं।
बिल्कुल कर सकते हैं।
ठीक है, वो तो हाँ, बस
ठीक है, get started. Get started.
हाँ,
Get started.
sorry,
Get started. I will keep changing the chart.
can I sit here?
Yes. Why not?
इसको ऊपर कर सकते हैं।
एक मिनट में इसको हटा दूं आपके सामने से। इसको बीच में क्लिक करके फिर आप जा सकते हैं।
ओके, ठीक। This is the chart of the Chaitra Shukla Pratipada for Ukraine. I understand everyone is concerned about the conditions in Ukraine. That is why all of us are speaking about Ukraine. Now the situation seems to be pretty mixed. So making a clear-cut prediction is very difficult. If you see the situation on the ground, you will also agree that it is difficult to predict the outcome of that. Neither Biden can predict it, nor Putin can predict it, nor Zelensky can predict what was going to happen. And a similar situation seems to be there in the chart. I would like to draw your attention on two very important combinations in this chart. One is that Jupiter is with the Lagna Lord Venus, but the difference of degrees is quite a lot. That is 26 degrees. So Venus, the Lagna Lord, is not being fully influenced or protected by Jupiter. I don't know whether we should call the 8th Lord's combination as protection or disturbance. So we see both the situations on the ground, that yes, there is certain protection because they have been going on for nearly 90 days and more, yet they are holding on. And this Jupiter-Venus combination is also aspecting the 4th house, which can represent the people there, the Ukrainian people. And they are holding out, and the 4th Lord is, along with the 3rd Lord, is in the 11th house. And there is a Raj Yoga between the Sun and Mercury. So there is some solace there. On the other hand, there is a very strong combination of Saturn and Mars within a degree, within almost a degree. And both are very strong. Saturn is in its own sign as the 9th Lord. Mars is in its exaltation sign, and it is the 7th Lord. And both the planets are in Dhanishta. That is the Mars sign. So Mars has done what it had to do, or probably it still has to do, because Saturn in transit is coming back to Capricorn. And it seems that when a retrograde planet moves back into its own Rashi, then it comes there only to finish off what was left before. So when Saturn will come in a few days' time to Capricorn, it seems that the war can probably come to some kind of a conclusion, or some clearer picture may be there. Now, another thing that is very interesting here is that Saturn marks the combination of the malefics has a Bindu score of 37, and the benefic combination of Jupiter and Venus has only 23. So there is a juggling around between who's doing better for the country, the Jupiter-Venus combination or Saturn-Mars, because here Saturn-Mars, the ninth lord is in the ninth house itself, forming a Raja Yoga with the seventh lord Mars. So it seems there are strengths and weaknesses in both combinations here. Especially in Dashmansh, if we see, Dashmansh seems to be not so bad at all. The Lagna Lord is exalted. Jupiter-Mars combination in the 410 axis is fairly good. I mean, after all, Jupiter and Mars are the 5th and the 9th lords. And the 11th lord, Mercury, has been thrown with the exalted Lagna Lord in the 9th house. With Moon, yes, the 12th lord. But the Sun-Mercury combination is indicative of possibilities of recovery of economy. The images that we see from Ukraine seem to be saying that what is left there to recover. But we hope the images are only a part of the whole game, and maybe it's just visual propaganda of one side or the other. So, but the real ground situation, according to the Dashmansh, is not so bad. Even Navansha, by and large, is fairly okay, where the Lagna Lord is in its own house. By Lagna Lord of the Rashi chart is in its own house, in the 3rd house. And Mars, the Yokarka for Leo, is there in the Lagna itself. So there seems to be some possibilities of recovery there. I would like to move on to the Russian chart. Just a moment, please. It's just another file there. ये तो शायद डॉक्टरस्टॉप का है, मेरा यहाँ होगा sorry. Here. Let's talk about the Russian chart now. Here straight away it is visible that Saturn and Mars, the very strong malefic combination is there in the 8th. Russia probably wasn't expecting that much of problem before they started the war. But Saturn and Mars are certainly not their strengths, they are their weakness. Can you put mine on, because that has Ashtak Varga on it. This is not mine yet, this must be Dr.
That's not the problem. There you go.
Yeah.
This is the one.
इसमें Russia आ गई, सबसे
Russia.
ऊपर।
Okay. There you go. And I can increase it.
और हाँ,
इतने ना था।
yeah. As you know, I like to play with the bindus. here we see the 8th house has very high bindus, 37, the highest in the chart. And the Jupiter 9 combination, which would be considered fairly good because it's also Raj Yoga of two benefics in the 9th house, but the bindus there are 19. So the Jupiter-Venus combination is not really as effective as it would seem without considering Ashtak Varga's inputs. So it seems to me that Russia as yet hasn't received much damage to their property. It's the property that has been damaged is that of Ukraine only. Maybe in times to come, because this 8th lord is aspecting the 4th lord Mercury, which is debilitated, it seems that even Russia would get their property damaged to a great extent. Looking at the birth chart, which is the Chaitra Shukla Pratipada chart for Russia, I think Ukraine seems to be better. But in the Navansh chart and the Shumansh chart, things are not so bad. So it seems that the doomsday declarers would have something to be silent about for some time to come. And both the countries, Russia and Ukraine, would bounce back, however slow the process might be. It seems that when the two great planets, the outermost planets, Jupiter and Saturn, when they go in their own signs, then the world order changes. It was high time that the world order changed because the world seems to be going in one direction, unidirection. And now the whole game has been open for many other countries to join in. So the drama, the new drama would unfold after a lot of destruction. Some of it has happened, some of it is very likely. The next scenario seems like that of China and Taiwan. And after that war, maybe the picture of the new order, new world order would emerge stronger. Thank you.
Meenakshi ji. Yeah, and I need to share.
Yeah, tell me. Yeah, tell me which one we need to share, look into now.
Talk about everything.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I will talk about everything now. I'll finish and then you can take. Those online, are you seeing me? I'm sharing, but she may need to do something there. I think there is a share from there as well as here. So
Yeah, online, if I change it in the view
see.
option.
Okay, great. Oh, I see. If I'm on the camera, then my screen will come. Got it.
Yes, the
Okay.
screen is visible, Narasimha ji. I have already stopped sharing that on the screen.
Perfect. Okay, so just wrapping up on Ukraine, I didn't conclusively say something. So in the current year's chart as well as the next year's annual chart, I see combinations of being involved in a war and destruction. So I said that it may drag on for a while. And we talked about Saturn. At the peak of this, Saturn was very close to moon, natal moon. Natal moon is at 29°45' in Capricorn. Now Saturn is in Aquarius, but he's still very close to moon. And he's going to go retrograde and go back and touch that. And around 25 degrees, he will become stationary and he will start moving forward again. So he will be very close to the natal moon of Ukraine for a while to come. So unfortunately, and he will go back to Aquarius only in January next year. So until then, I'm hopeful that it will end. There will be peace, but I'm afraid that it will at least drag on till the end of this year. And probably when Saturn goes to Aquarius, it may not stop immediately because he'll be still very close to Moon, who's at the fag end of Capricorn. So until he's like 5 degrees, 6 degrees of Aquarius away from that Moon sufficiently, so probably till next spring, I'm afraid that there may not be any relief for Ukraine. But the thing is, we saw in the Trimsamsa chart, which shows suffering in the country, the 2021 chart was terrible. 8th house was extremely afflicted and strong, whereas the current year's chart is better from this August. So I expect that some status quo, some new status quo will be established, and people see even now as we speak, people in the Western Ukraine are living normal lives now relatively. It is basically the Eastern Ukraine that is suffering. So I think things will become more normal for more people, but the clashes will continue and some kind of peace is not possible till next year and most likely next spring. That is my expectation. Now let us look at the chart of Russia. Again, instead of lunar New Year charts, I will use Russia's chart because I'm comfortable enough with that chart. Let me stop this, hide this so that I can access these menus. What happened? Floating panel. Okay, now we can access these menus. So if you look at Russia's chart, you will see that Moon is in Leo. And right now, right now he's in Aquarius, but at the time they started war, Saturn was in Capricorn. So it was Saturn in the 6th house. And Saturn in the 6th house is conducive for being aggressive and destroying your enemies, etc. So, and also Saturn, that's the radical position of Saturn. Saturn is in Capricorn in their chart. So, and he temporarily went to Aquarius, but he's coming back very soon. In a few weeks, he's coming back to Capricorn. So Saturn will be in the 6th house till the end of this year, till next January. So that means that Russia will continue to be aggressive, but after Saturn moves to Aquarius and he's well within Aquarius, probably from next January, February, or more likely spring, there may be some change in this bold and aggressive attitude of Russia. And the other thing I want to say is when Saturn goes to Pisces in a few years, in another 2.5, 3 years, that will be a terrible time for Russia. And one more thing is, look at the economy. Let me make the Tithi Pravesh chart of Russia. 2021. If you make the Tithi Pravesh chart of, which is basically the lunar birthday chart of Russia, you can see that in the current year's chart, which started on December 24, 2021, Mars and Ketu are in the 6th house of aggression, boldness, etc. in the Rasi chart. And in the Navamsa chart also, you see Rahu in the 6th house. And the 6th Lord, Jupiter, 6th Lord of war is in Scorpio with Mars. So there is strong Martian influence on the 6th house, as well as Rahu is in the 6th house. And in the Rasi, Mars and Ketu are there. So overall, this shows why Russia is so aggressive during this year. And if you look at the 2022 Tithi Pravesh chart, if you look at the 2022 Tithi Pravesh chart, 6th house again has a malefic in the Rasi chart, but it is Sun. It is different from Mars and Ketu being there, especially in one sign. And if you look at the Navamsa, Mars is in the 6th house, but he's debilitated, and Venus is also there. So Russia may become less aggressive in the coming year, but I expect that for the remainder of this year, Russia may continue to be very aggressive and pursue this. And looking at the economy, if you look at 2021 Tithi Pravesh chart again, you can see that Russia's Hora chart shows economy, finances. There are 3 planets in the 12th house of laws and debilitated Mars afflicted by Rahu and Ketu. So there are some negative indications here, but there are also some strengths in the chart. Lagna Lord in Lagna, 5th Lord in 5th house. So there are some strengths in this chart. So irrespective of what the Western media may be telling us, I expect that Russian economy will bounce back within this year. Russia will manage their finances pretty well. I don't expect any crash of Russia and coming to knees, because because of all these sanctions, etc. And if you look at the next year's chart, which starts on December 13, 2022, Lagna Lord is in that 11th house with the Yokarka Mars, with the Bhagya Lord Mars. That is a very good combination. And in Hora chart, 2nd house and 11th house are very important. By the way, 2nd and 11th Lord Mercury is exalted in the 2nd house of wealth. So I expect that Russia will bounce back within this year, and next year will be actually very good for Russia. So I don't think really the Western policy of putting sanctions on Russia is really effective. It is, Russia will find a way around. They will basically have new alliances with China, India, and other countries, and their economy will continue to do well. It will be the West that is unnecessarily hurting itself. And looking at the chart of Taiwan, actually more than the chart of Taiwan, let's look at it. One interesting thing I want to point out is, just as Saturn's transit exactly over the natal moon caused strife for Ukraine in February, March, April time period, unfortunately for Taiwan, Taiwan's chart has moon at 23 degree Aries and Rahu right now, and by the way, he's affected by Rahu. Rahu right now is 29 degree Aries. So he's within 6 degrees, he's within striking distance. So as we go on in a couple of months, Rahu will come exactly over moon. So there is some possibility of a war or some tension in the Taiwan Strait. And one more really interesting thing to note is the lunar eclipse that Ronnie mentioned earlier. If you look at, let me look at November 10th. I think it's on November 8th. I'll just make it November 10, and I will say previous lunar eclipse. Okay, it is on November 8th. So if you look at the eclipse chart, at the time of eclipse, Sun and Moon are at 22 degree plus, close to 23 degrees, and Rahu and Ketu are close to 21 degrees. So if you remember in Taiwan's chart, that is where Moon is. So very close to Moon's longitude, there is an eclipse. Sun, Moon, Rahu, Ketu, everybody will be there, and it will be a total lunar eclipse. So there is a possibility of something starting in the August time frame, July, August, but more likely this time period is really dangerous in around the eclipse time frame. Around when US is busy with the elections, there is a possibility of some danger. China may take a page out of Russia's book and do something in Taiwan. That is a distinct possibility. And we astrologers can never confidently say something. We cannot be 100% sure, but there is a very strong likelihood of that happening. And one more thing, Ronnie mentioned about Biden. That's a really great point. And if you actually look at Joe Biden's natal chart, in Joe Biden's natal chart, Lagna Lord Mars is at 20 degree 41 in Libra. So Rahu and Ketu will be exactly on his natal Lagna Lord at the time of the eclipse. So this is not a good eclipse for Joe Biden at all. There is a possibility of some danger to him. But as far as the possibility of death, etc., there are better indications closer to the next election, 2024 election, there is a chance. But I don't think there is any danger to his life, but there is some serious problem for him. And looking at the chart of China, actually, I don't trust the chart of China. I'm not confident of the time when China became a separate country. So I'll just use the Lunar New Year chart, but I don't use Chaitra Pratipada, as I mentioned in the session in the morning. I use the first new moon of Dakshinayana. First new moon, basically the sun moon conjunction in tropical Gemini. That is basically what I use. So looking at that Lunar New Year chart. Oh, sorry. I have to change it to Beijing. If I say previous Lunar New Year, so it is on June 29. So that is the first new moon after the summer solstice. And that is the chart that I use, which I found to be working the most reliably for mundane matters. So if you look at China's chart, Okay, so this is the chart. This is the chart for Beijing, China, and you can see that in the Navamsa chart, which shows relations with other countries. Lagna Lord is Mars, and he's in the sixth house in Mula Trikona. So when the Lagna Lord is in sixth, you are interested in going to a war, and especially if Mars, fairy planets are involved, there is a chance. So there is a chance that Russia, even if it doesn't actually go to a war, it will do something aggressive in its relations with the other countries. So China will be extremely bold in the coming year. And if we look at the year after that, just because that is even more interesting. If you look at the 2023 chart, you will see that Saturn in one sign is in the sixth house, and you will see a bunch of afflictions in this chart. The luminaries are affected by Mars, etc. And also in the Rasi chart, there's a Guru Chandala Yoga in the 12th house, and Ketu, the co-lord of the 7th house, is in the 6th house. That is a combination for aggressions against other countries. So I expect that around this eclipse time or sometime later this year, China may start some aggressive moves, and that may really reach some culmination point in the next year. And one more small point I want to make is, in my opinion, we have been seeing the pandemic, and after that Russia invading Ukraine and China siding with Russia, giving almost complete support, and China giving some signals about Taiwan. This is all build up to something that I expect in the 2030 time frame. If you look at, basically this is all really long-term stuff. Tentatively, let's say November 15, 2030. You will see that Jupiter and Rahu, Jupiter at 12 degrees Scorpio, Rahu at 14 degrees Scorpio, they are in Anuradha Nakshatra, and Saturn at 13 degree in Taurus, and Ketu at 14 degree in Taurus. They are extremely close. So Guru Rahu conjunction in Scorpio in Anuradha, Sen Ketu conjunction in Rohini in Vrishabha. This is very similar to a combination Vyasa describes in Mahabharata time frame. It is very likely, by the way, this is another Saturn transiting Rohini, like in 2001. So around this time period, towards the end of 2030, I'm really afraid that there'll be a major war going on in the world, and we will see a build up to it over the coming decade, coming 8-9 years. So I think we will see a lot more stuff in the coming years, and India has to be prepared, and US has to be prepared. Now, looking at the chart of US, I don't have any reliable chart of US. I haven't found any charts that people use to be working. By working, I mean explain known past with some confidence, basically without beating around the bush in a straightforward manner. So I don't use any chart of US. So I'll just use the, again, Lunar New Year chart. Previous. If we look at the previous, if you look at the Lunar New Year chart of US, you will see that the D30 chart, which shows suffering in the country, has Saturn and Mars in the 8th house. And the 6th Lord Mercury is in Lagna, which is not good for Lagna. 6th Lord, 3rd and 6th Lord, functional malefic in Lagna. So country will be going through a lot of suffering during this time. And Mercury shows arguments, debates, etc. And the 3rd and 6th Lord, 3rd is communication and 6th is fights and disagreements. So the lot of them, Mercury being in Lagna, means there'll be a lot of, all the arguments that we see in the country will just keep going on in the coming year. And Saturn and Mars in the 8th house is not good at all. Two malefics, that too Scorpio is an evil sign. So violence, grief, etc. will really plague the nation. There will be a lot of suffering in the nation during the year. And looking at the Navamsa, in the Navamsa chart, there is an Amavasya Yoga in the 7th house, but Venus, the planet of harmony and planet of relations with other nations, he is strong in the 10th house. So US will maintain good relations with the other nations during this period. By the way, one point I forgot to mention is in the case of China's chart, in the Hora chart, 7th and 8th lords are together. Actually, let me quickly go back. Oops. So if I change this to Beijing, China, make the lunar new year chart. You can see that in the Hora chart, Capricorn is the Lagna, 7th Lord and 8th Lord are together in the 8th house. And for moon, that is Manakarka Sthana. So 7th Lord, 8th Lord together is basically death. It is Marka combination. So in the coming year, in the coming 12 months, there is a chance of Chinese economy suffering a lot. And that may also feed into some of the stuff that they may do. Should I continue with US and India or come back later? Okay, I'll.
I think let us.
Yeah.
Ronnie, would you like to talk?
Sure. But I don't have that much work.
I think you have to unshare and we have to change. That's why I thought I'll just finish everything.
Yeah, whatever. Okay.
Okay, I'll just finish. Yeah. Okay, let me go back to US. What is going on? Okay, so if we look at the chart of US, in the Rasi chart, the 4th house contains Mars Rahu combination. So that shows Sukhalopa. So there won't be any sense of comfort or a sense of knowing where you are going. Country will lack a sense of direction during the year. And I mentioned earlier that Navamsa chart shows good relations with the other nations. And we don't see a strong 6th house or 8th house or 12th house here. So I don't expect US to really get involved in any of these wars. Even if something happens in Taiwan, just like in Ukraine, US will stay away. I don't see any war for US in this year. In future, it may happen a few years down the road, but not this year. And as far as economy is concerned, in the Hora chart, there are some negative combinations, but the 11th house is strong and the 2nd Lord is strong and the 9th house is strong. So even if the economy goes down as a result of some of the global events, I expect that economy will bounce back. And this is a pretty decent year for US economy. So I expect that any stock market disturbances will be short term. And looking at the Navamsa chart, in the Navamsa, for change in the governance, we look at the Dasyamsa and Navamsa. Navamsa shows the dharma, and it is basically shows the policy of the country. So Navamsa chart shows what ideology is dominating the country during that period, and 10th house shows the ruling parties' policies, and the 3rd house shows the opposition's policies, and both are strong. One has own planet in own sign, the other has planet in exaltation sign. So I expect that the November 8th elections will be inconclusive in the sense that both the sides can claim a victory. There will be a lot of emotion on both the sides. There will be social issues that really charge up both the sides, and both the sides will have water turnout and both the sides will do pretty well. So there won't be any major gains for any one side. Usually in the midterm elections, the party in power will really collapse, but I don't expect that to happen here. There will be enough success for Joe Biden and enough failures that both sides can say we won. It will be like a draw in my opinion. Yeah, this election. Yeah, it will be like a draw in my opinion. And finally, about India. Actually, are we interested in India? I'll just. If we look at India's chart, so if you see, oh, I haven't clicked this. That's why it looks different. Okay, so this is the lunar. Oh, actually, you know what? For India, because I have a reliable chart, I'll just use India's chart. I feel more comfortable with that. If I see the Tithi Pravesh chart of 2022 of India, the August 15, 1947 chart, when you have the formation chart or independence chart of a country and it worked in the past, it is more reliable than the lunar new year charts. So if you see this chart, you will see that in the Rasi chart, the seventh house contains Mercury Sun combination and the Lagna Lord is in one sign in the second house. So second house is pretty strong. So let's quickly check the Hora chart. In the Hora chart, the ninth Lord Moon and the seventh Lord Venus are together in the 11th house. So 11th house is pretty strong in the chart. And also Jupiter is fifth Lord in the fourth house, aspect in the 10th house. So the overall, the Hora chart is pretty strong. So Indian economy will, of course, as the global economy struggles with these wars, there will be some disturbances, but relative to the other countries, India's economy will continue to do well in the coming year. And in the Navamsa chart, the Yogakaraka Venus is exalted in the second house and Lagna Lord is exalted in the 9th house. So Indian diplomacy will really take off during this year. In this year, India will assert itself in the international community, not in an aggressive way, but in a very sophisticated and Libra kind of way. India will really come on the international stage and India's importance will increase. And India's alliances, for example, Quad will become more prominent during this year. Quad, NATO, Israel, these countries will come together during the coming year. So I think this is a good year for India, but there are some negative things also. You can see that in the Rasi chart, just like in the case of US, there is a Mars Rahu combination in the 4th house. So people will feel like there is no direction. There's no comfort, basically. You feel like you don't know what you're doing. So there'll be some issues like that. And in the D30 chart, if we see, the 8th Lord Venus is debilitated in the 7th house. So there are some other negative combinations here. So I expect that there will be some attempts by some foreign powers to create some disturbance in India, to create some commotion against a ruling party in India, but it will be partly successful, but it won't really completely succeed. And overall, this is a pretty good year for India. So these are basically what I was thinking of. I will pass it on to the next person.
I think I said really, as a general rule, everything I wanted to say about the period between July and the very beginning of January. I don't know, again, nobody has said anything about the pandemic. So, I don't know if all of this craziness that I'm seeing in July, end of July, is going to be another turning point with the pandemic, another strain coming on. I don't know, but it's a troublesome period. And I think it's going to be troublesome for America in different ways. I mean, it could be meteorological, it could be out of control fires, and it could be, attacks, again, violence. And this could be all over the world because these transits, that are happening in the sky affect the world. We have one sky. But especially when you look at the fact that Mars and Rahu are going to do that at the end of July, beginning of August, and on July 28th, Mars actually hits the degree of that lunar eclipse in November. And that November eclipse does hit Joe Biden's Mars. The October eclipse hits his moon. So it is a very troubling time for America. It doesn't necessarily have to be him. I always look at the president or prime minister or leader's chart as representing the country. So anything that happens to the leader is indicative. And even though America is not the world, America does have a great influence on what happens all over the world, especially in the financial markets. And so, in August, also Rahu is going to come to that eclipse degree of November 8th, but also Saturn. And now that Saturn is retrograding, I hadn't realized it as much until Dr. Charak said it, but Saturn is going to come back to where Mars is in the Chaitra Shukla Pratipad chart at 25 degrees. That's where it's going to station. And so Mars is going to hit the Saturn of the Chaitra Shukla Pratipad chart, and then it's going to hit the Mars, and then it's going to station. And so the end of October, we see the Saturn stationing, we see the Mars stationing, retrograde, Saturn direct, and we see the eclipses. So Saturn is going to move direct. And finally, and it's true, when Saturn moves back into Makara, it's like the last chance to sort of rectify anything that has happened with Saturn in the last 2 years. And then once it moves into Kumbha, then it's also going to, I think, change some of the energy, but it's going to be, I think, a lot of cleanup. And like I said, if Ukraine and Russia come to some kind of agreement, I get the feeling there will be something, some land will go to Russia, some land will stay with Ukraine. I don't think it'll happen until the end of the year, beginning of next year, when you have Saturn changing signs. And then the economy might also start to pick up, because even when you go back to 2008, 2011, when Jupiter was in Pisces and Aries in 2010, 11, that's and 12, those years were things were, times when things picked up. But, I just get very bad feelings when I look at the president's chart and I see all these, eclipses hitting his chart and degrees. So I don't know if it represents him taking some kind of pullback. And then, of course, the eclipse on election day. I think there's going to be a lot of challenges. I don't think it's going to be resolved on the day of the election. I think it's going to go on into maybe, again, December, January, where a lot of legal challenges are going to take place. I don't think it's going to be a great election. I mean, in terms of peacefulness, So anyway, that's what I have to say.
We don't have much time. I think we can seek some comments from people who are here and online.
Yeah, so Christoph has come from Latvia, all the way from Latvia to attend this conference. Yeah, and
Yeah, and I was asking something already before, and as the war is happening, like around 500, 600 miles from where I live, so it's just nearby, and we have a border with Russia and so on, and but this time I wanted to ask a question still about the war, and how do you think, is there gonna be a war on a Russia land in the Russia? Like before, right now it's just in the Ukraine, but it can be, it's just 100 miles. It's where it's happening, maybe less, maybe even a bit more. This is one question. Another question is, I have a lot of questions, but I'll ask only these two. Another question is there going to be nuclear weapons? Big one, small one, doesn't matter. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, let us first answer his question. Let us first answer his question. He asked a question, we didn't answer it. Yeah. So my 2 cents is, in the long term, leading up to 2030, Russia may be aggressive with respect to other countries also, but for the next couple of years, things will slow down. As I showed in the chart, I don't expect Russia to be as aggressive as they were this year, come 2023. So I don't see a danger in the short term, but in the long term, Putin and Russia are to be feared in that region, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this current year, this year, the Chaitra Pratibhada chart that we have does not show much damage to the land of Russia. It shows more to the land and communications of Ukraine. But next year chart we have not made. But I think by the time the next year comes, the Saturn's movement will be less aggressive, and I think things would change for the better, at least for the time being. So I don't see any major damage to the land of Russia.
He's asking about Latvia.
No, Latvia is not coming into this. He is asking about whether the fight will remain in the Ukrainian territory or extend to Russian territory. So Russian territory probably is relatively safe right now.
Can you show the China thing from my this thing? I would take just a couple of minutes to describe the China part of the Chaitra Shukla Pratipada. I see 2-3 things there. One is that the Lagna Lord is with the 12th Lord and the second Lord. We can also say it as the second and the 12th Lords are together along with the Lagna Lord. This does not bode very well for China's economy. The second aspect is that in the 410 axis, there are Rahu and Ketu. And the 4th Lord has gone in the 8th house with the 6th Lord Jupiter. And there is an aspect of Saturn on the 4th house. So there seems to be possibilities of discontent in the public of China. And this Mars-Saturn combination, which is happening in the 7th house, while it may be difficult for their foreign relations, but then this Mars-Saturn combination is also aspecting their Lagna. And Saturn is also aspecting the Sun-Moon Lagna. So, and the two benefics, Jupiter, Venus, are in the 8th. So I don't think things are going to be very good for China. But there is a possibility that Jinping loses some of the aura that he has created for himself in the Chinese public's mind. Thank you.
Well, about China, I think what Vinay has said is perfectly all right. The only addition I would like to make is that whenever the 4th and the 6th Lord are together, that is accidents, and it goes to the combination goes to the 8th house, and 4th house as Ketu are affected by Saturn. So I think some of the natural disasters would also affect China and cause some deaths there. But then the China and the Taiwan charts are the same. So even the divisional charts are the same. So it doesn't appear that there is going to be any major shift in the relationship of the two. And perhaps, I mean, I don't have the exact birth chart of China or birth chart of Taiwan, but Chaitra Shukla chart does not indicate much change in their relationship. And I think if there has to be any difference in their destinies, then it has to be seen from the charts of their leaders and whatever eclipses fall on the important houses of the charts of the leaders. So as far as the Chaitra Shukla chart is concerned, I think there is not much difference. But if you have the charts of the leaders of the two countries, then the destinies of the leaders affect the destinies of the nation. So that could be the only difference, and we don't have their charts. So looking at the Chaitra Shukla, I think China and Taiwan are going to continue the way they are. Thank you.
A question about Russia's CSP chart.
Yeah.
There's a Viparit Raj Yoga in the 8th house. Combination of 6 and both grahas in strength. I just want to know how this would play out.
You see, this combination occurs in the CSP of many countries, as I told you. Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Russia, and maybe some other countries also. So it will be the same for them. Certainly, the combination of the 6th Lord and the 8th Lord in the 8th house is not a good combination for health, whatever Raj Yoga you might consider it. So as far as the health of the country is concerned, it is not good. And Saturn-Mars combination particularly is a very aggressive, igneous, incendiary combination. So, and Mars in the 8th house alone increases the death rate. So when it is associated with the 8th lord also. So generally the accidents and problems, occur, which increase the unnatural accidental events and deaths. Okay.
Any,
The question is, can someone say something about the coming year in Israel? Will there be a war?
Unfortunately, I won't be showing any chart, but I have seen Israel chart earlier. I don't expect a war in Israel in the coming year, but I do expect some political changes and upheavals in Israel in the coming year. Politically, it's a slightly turbulent time for Israel.
I hope that answers your question.
If anyone else wants to add.
So what can we say about the commodity prices in USA?
Commodity prices. One thumb rule is when Jupiter is in one sign, gold does well. He is in Pisces and next he will be in a friendly sign. In general, gold tends to do well in those periods. And when Saturn is in one sign, which will happen for a few more years, oil tends to do well. And this you can see in history. Other than that, I don't have any specific, I'm not a commodities expert. No, the prices will be good basically. It will be more. So investing in oil, investing in gold is good during this period. The next 2 years, in my opinion, based on her natal chart, her dasas and annual charts are pretty good for her. There is a chance of increased power and position in the next couple of years. And before 2024 election, just before 2024 election, there is even a possibility of her becoming president for a short while. But I don't expect her to be elected in 2024. I expect a Republican to win in 2024. I don't expect Kamala Harris to win in 2024. I expect some Republican to beat her. Yeah, even if she's the sitting president.
so final comment on economy for US. Vinay, no comment on US economy or anything about US?
My comments are in the negative.
Negative, yeah, so that is also, yeah, so that is a comment. Yeah, whatever the comments are, please.
In the Chaitra Shukla Pratipada chart of USA, the 12th Lord is exalted in the second house with the second Lord. I think it's a damaging situation rather than an elevating situation. The redeeming factor is that this combination has 38 bindus, so it's not so bad. And after all, Mars is not only the 12th Lord, it is also the 5th Lord. So 5th Lord combining with the second Lord is a Dhana Yoga. So there is some damage, but some recovery. But substantial losses can be expected.
I think I can add slightly to it that the Lagna Lord and the 11th Lord are in the 3rd house together. So it may not be too negative because that is a positive situation. So Jupiter, the Lagna Lord, Venus, the 11th Lord. So from the Chaitra Shukla chart, although 2 malefics in the 2nd house generally damage the economy, but I think the income is sufficient to make up for that.
Any information on US economy, how it will do?
I already discussed it previously.
Said it is, yeah, whatever it is, you
Oh, my expectation is the whole world economy will face some challenges in the coming year or coming couple of years, but US economy will hang in there. They will survive. Any downturn will basically be recovered. So overall, US economy will be fine. Not as good as Indian economy, but US economy will be okay. It's not neither positive nor negative. Slightly
Ronnie,
positive.
Well, it is interesting. I mean, because employment is up. Okay, inflation is up. So, when you talk about the economy, like some people will say, but, employment is up. So I think the thing is when you have the Mars, I think if you're looking at this chart and reviewing this chart, the US chart with the Chaitra Shukla Pratipad with Mars and Saturn in the second, exalted and rulership, I think that it could mean that what they're trying to do now is manipulate the economy with effort. You know what I mean? So they're raising interest rates. I mean, they're working at it. You know what I mean? They're not ignoring it. So I think that the economy, I mean, because of all the other stuff that I've been talking about, I think do go a lot up and down. And I think I think next year will be better. But I think that this Mars and Saturn means that they are paying attention to it and they're going to start to try to do something and not just leave it up to chance. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's, I think, reflected. If you look at this chart, that's what would be reflected. But the housing market is not going to be doing, I mean, it's going to stand still with the new moon, everything's in the fourth house with the debilitated Mercury. So I don't know. Again, I think it'll start to move again next year, but I think this year is going to be.
Yeah, please keep it next to your mouth.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just handing, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Next year, I think is going to be better. I think the housing market also goes through some kind of standstill because the sun, moon, Mercury are all in the fourth house. But I think that I think there's going to be certain movement and I think that there will be that, like I said, I think not manipulation, but effort. So they're now like trying to control the economy, with Mars and Saturn there,
Any news about political changes? Any political changes?
In America?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that whole period, and like I said, Biden's chart looks very difficult to me as the country, but he might also have some physical problems. The eclipse is on his moon and the other eclipse is on his Mars. I don't think that the election is going to be smooth. I don't know if it's going to be a draw as Narasimha says, meaning if it's a draw, maybe it means one house of Congress goes Republican and one house of Congress goes Democrat. I mean, that to me is what a draw would be like, that they won't both turn. And then you'll just have a country that can't do anything because,
problem. Any news about political?
I'll say a sentence for the politics a little later, but I would add something to what I said a little earlier, and that is that the youth of the country in USA, they are going to contribute massively, much more than the previous years in building up the economy of USA. So maybe a lot of innovation, a lot of futuristic thinking, and that would help the country contain its losses or contain its downward trend. About the political situation, the 10th Lord is debilitated. And the 4th Lord, I mean the dispositor of the 10th Lord is in the previous house. So there seem to be some difficulties, at least in the sense that the president will not enjoy a very good or very successful term. But I don't see that there would be a complete upheaval or change of presidency.
Dr. Charak? Yeah.
You said that you thought the youth of America would be doing things to make things better economically, et cetera. Where do you see that?
5th Lord exalted in the 2nd house with the 2nd Lord.
Okay, that's great. Go for it.
Hi, I was wondering, do you think they'll stop guns in the next
2 years? Because I know there was a shooting in like Texas and stuff. Do you think they'll stop doing like shootings like all over the place? Because I know there's been a lot of that going on around, like policies and stuff like that. Do you think they'll stop that in a couple of years as well?
I don't know what the
I
question
have
was.
not understood the question.
I don't
I have not understood the question, sir.
Should there be any gun control?
There's a lot of gun violence, I think Letitia's asking about, and they're looking for policy. And so I think she was wondering if the chart can talk about.
I wish there was a change, but I'm afraid there's nothing in the chart that I see that suggests that there'll be a major gun control legislation. I think whatever they do will be superficial. They will not get to the bottom of the problem. And I'm afraid that at least for this year, it will continue. The problem will continue, unfortunately.
Thank you. I have a question. I know we didn't talk about Britain at all tonight, but because of the age of the Queen Sovereign and that family and all that's going on in the world, I'm wondering if either one of you have looked at the Queen and when maybe there would be a new royalty exchange. And I don't know if anyone has looked at it, but I thought maybe we were talking mundane today, so.
Well, I think what I said also was when I was talking about the fact that I think there's going to be a lot of turnover in leaders. I was saying that it could be, America, Europe, Ukraine, Russia, India, I mean, China. I think there's going to be a lot, meaning more than just one or two. I think the world order is going to really take a big shift. Because there's so much, and even when I talk about eclipses, and I said this the other day, that the eclipse of October 25th, the Venus is exactly on that sun moon, on the new moon. And that means a real combustion of what Venus represents. Venus represents cabinets and ministers. And I think that all over the world, there's going to be a lot of resignations, changes. I mean, I just think that's going to happen. Queen Elizabeth, I don't want to keep predicting that she's going to get sick or die or anything like that, because that's, or abdicate, but, she's also affected by these eclipses as well. So her son, her birthday, she's Aries. And so the Aries Libra eclipses are also affecting her. And I believe England is an Aries country, isn't it? Isn't the UK an Aries country as well? So yeah, I think the UK, I mean, we can, when Rakesh gives us these countries, you can only do so much in one session. But I do think the UK is going to have a whole bunch of changes as well, So that's, yeah. That's
Thank
what
you.
was
I
saying.
appreciate you actually just speaking to it. And yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So about Russia and Ukraine, what is the final verdict? Vinayji, you start.
I agree what you're saying too.
Well, I suppose everyone has said their final words. And there doesn't seem to be any scope of change of opinion. And I don't know if an average of opinions can be taken and considered as a final word. My own final word is the same. That was the prior word, which was the foreword. That is, the things will turn out to be not so bad, and both Russia and Ukraine would bounce back in times to come. But this war would have a terrible impact on the economy of the world. And as I said, this would be an indication of how the world order will be shifting. Thank you.
I've also said everything that had to be said. I think while discussing, I forgot to uh, do the Mesh Sankranti for Ukraine, but there might be a change in the leadership as far as Ukraine is concerned.
Yeah, my expectation, as I mentioned earlier, is till for the rest of this year, I don't expect any relief from this war that is going on, or as Russia will call the special military operation. But after the next year, after the new year, there is a chance of relief, and especially in the springtime period, early springtime period, there is hope, and Russia will not be affected that much economically by this. They will bounce back and build new alliances, and they will be fine in the long run. And Ukraine will take a long time to build. And based on Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky's chart, I don't expect that he will lose power. He will actually become stronger as a result. Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukraine president, I expect that he will continue to be well known, well liked, and I expect that this will start a chain reaction in the world. China doing something, and NATO, China, everybody has their own agendas. So this is start a chain reaction that will culminate in 2030, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, listen, I think that, like I said, a lot of things are going to culminate in the fall, especially around that eclipse in November. But I think also because Mars will be retrograde and go direct January 6th, Saturn will go into Kumbh in a few days after that. I'm sorry, January 12th, Mars will go direct. It'll go into Kumbh January 6th. So that's going to change some things. And it could very well be that there will be a culmination of something that will bring that war to some kind of end. But I do think Ukraine is going to give up some things. I don't think it's going to be like a victory or anything like that. And I think Zelensky, if you look at Zelensky's chart, he's actually in a moon Jupiter dasha, and Jupiter is 12th from his moon. And then he was going into moon Saturn in November, but Saturn has a better relationship to his moon than Jupiter
Zelensky
does.
chart is available?
Yeah,
Correct?
yeah, it is. Yeah, they're pretty much correct.
I had to change the time a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's pretty, yeah,
Matches very well.
yeah, it's very
And it
good.
is on Astro Data Bank or Astro?
I think, yeah.
It's on Astro Data Bank. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Zelensky's
just
chart.
have to adjust by a few.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I have
so the war will continue until end of this year, or you don't have any?
I think it probably will. I think something will culminate. Maybe they'll go to the table and do some, discussions, mediations. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to
I
predict,
understand.
you know,
Whatever-
but that's what I think. I think
Yeah.
things change in January, like the whole
Okay.
world order, like you're
Any
saying,
war
into the
will
spring.
continue? This Ukraine-Russia war will continue until end of this year, or?
Yeah, that is what I expect.
Dr. Charak and Vinay ji?
I think it has been said already.
He's asking 3-4 times, hoping that one of us will say, yeah, it is ending tomorrow.
So that,
I wish I could end it tomorrow.
no, I'm saying-
It has been said already. I mean,
So everybody thinks that it will continue until end of this year or beginning of next year, until Saturn moves to Aquarius?
How about the food prices?
Sorry, food price.
Yes. The food prices, do you think they'll go down?
Not in this year. I haven't looked at next year, but not in this year.
Anybody else has any questions? So online, anybody has a question? You can answer. Okay. No problem. So we thank our panelist, and I just wanted to, Aditya Tripathi is listening. Aditya ji, can you open your video? Yeah.
बस क्वेश्चन भी था शर्मा जी, लेकिन मैंने हेजिटेशन
Yeah, so Aditya Tripathi is a very interesting person. Every TV in the world which you see, he has a chip. The digital voice is invented by him. So there are courses which are taught in MIT and Stanford by tripod technology which he created. So now every TV in the world has this chip. So it is he's the biggest, very big inventor, about 200 patents in his name. And another company which he started has a chip which increases the mileage of a car. So GM has invested in that, Delphi has invested. he also has a chip for increasing the mileage of an electric car. So he is a big inventor. He comes up with all these, and these are all inventions he did while he was in India, written down. And so I saw his notes of when he was a student and that how it should be done. So digital signal processing is his play, and he's a great inventor. So one day I think so Texas Instrument has the patent for his chip. So every TV in the world has his chip, and every car probably will have his chip. So yeah, yeah.
Sharma ji, namaskar. This is Aditya Tripathi speaking.
Yeah, so we have his horoscope if somebody wants to discuss. So I wanted to acknowledge his contribution to the world. It is like 200 patents in IBM and any company.
And Sharma ji, if I could just say one word, thanks so very much for your kind words and your support over the years. And I just wanted to give you the latest update that General Motors has now exceeded 4 million vehicles with our cars. And at this time, we have $76 million cash in the bank. And that's not my cash, that belongs to the company. And I want to just say one thing in one line, especially to Dr. Charak and all our participants, even Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao, and all those people who have helped me through. Astrology is like basically my jigyasa. And coming from India, I guess every person has a strong interest, and to me, part of my spiritual beliefs is involving astrology. So I want to tell you that if my company gets acquired, then within my capacity, I will contribute to the astrological and also for Jyotish research. And, because I have benefited so much from all of you. So basically, there is a rishi rent from all of you and me. So if I could say this, that to express my gratitude, I need everyone's blessing to see, let us say if our company gets acquired, then see what happens. So I want to do namaste to everyone, and सभी लोगों को मैं प्रणाम कर रहा हूँ. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.
I met him in 1988. He's my brother-in-law, senior from BHU, Banaras. So at that time, I read his palm. My hobby is reading palm. So since then, I'm in touch with him. So he did one IPO, but then so he has a very interesting life story. So anyway, so we thank Dr. Charak, Narasimha Rao, Vinay ji and Ronnie. And the biggest thank goes to Meenakshi and her daughter.
Thank you, Rakesh. Thank you everyone for hanging in here. So we could see that there was some of the technical thing which we have to manage, but thanks a lot for everyone for your contribution. Okay, so thank you. I do like to say thank you to Aditya ji for being so active and asking all the questions here.
Yeah, thank you, Meenakshi.
Okay, so
and
there
I,
is
by the way,
like
Meenakshi ji, I didn't forget the name of Mr. Vinay, Aditya, and also Ronnie. I have your book also, and so I have studied. And you may have forgotten, Mr. Narasimha, once you and Sanjay Rath, you guys were in Sunnyvale in a conference. So I had briefly met with you there also, but you probably meet with so many people, so you may not remember me. But I want to once again express my sincere gratitude to everyone. Namaskar.
Namaste, namaste everyone.
Namaste.
Now I think I will let you guys go. We will do the Purnamidam.
Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om.